There's a moment in every life when the crowd fades, the applause dies down, the world goes quiet, and the only person left is you. No spotlight, no audience, just your reflection staring back. And in that stillness, a truth rises. You cannot lead anyone until you can lead yourself. Not your team, not your family, not your followers, not your business. Because real leadership doesn't begin on a stage, it begins in the mirror. It begins with the choices you make when no one's watching. It begins with the promises you keep to yourself. It begins with the way you speak to your own soul when the world forgets your name. That's where leadership is born, in the dark, not the light. Because before you can carry others, you must first carry yourself. And that's the hardest battle. Not managing others, but mastering your own mind. Not inspiring a team, but igniting your own spirit. Not building influence, but building integrity. Because leadership is not a title. It's a tone, a truth, a presence that can only be forged through self-command. Ask yourself, what kind of leader are you when no one needs you? What kind of standards do you uphold when there's no audience, no consequence, no reward? What kind of energy do you bring into rooms, into conversations, into the atmosphere of your life? That's the real test. Because self-leadership isn't about doing more, it's about becoming more. Becoming someone who doesn't need external motivation to take internal action. Someone who doesn't wait for clarity, they create it. Someone who doesn't crumble under pressure, they focus in it. Someone who wakes up not chasing a feeling, but living from a principle. This is where everything changes. When you stop trying to lead with strategy and start leading with state, your internal state is your leadership brand. When you walk into a room, people feel your alignment before they hear your ideas. They feel your centeredness before they follow your vision. Because leadership isn't about charisma, it's about congruence. The alignment between who you say you are and who you show up as every single day. And that kind of congruence doesn't happen by accident. It's built, sculpted, forged through fire. It's born in the discipline of thought, in the ritual of reflection, in the ruthless honesty of self-inquiry. So let's get honest. Can you keep your word to yourself? Can you delay gratification for a bigger vision? Can you hold the tension between where you are and where you know you're called to be? Because that's the price of leadership. Not applause, not popularity, but pressure, precision, patience. And those who rise, they rise not because they're the loudest, they rise because they've led themselves first. They've led themselves out of comfort and into discipline, out of noise and into focus, out of reaction and into intentional action. They've learned to sit in silence long enough to hear the voice that says, you were made for more. And when that voice comes, when it whispers beneath the distractions of life, the leader listens. The leader doesn't need a map, they become one. The leader doesn't seek perfection, they cultivate resilience. Because they know leadership is not about being ahead, it's about going first. You go first in the fire. You go first in the fight. You go first in the forgiveness. You go first in the focus. That's what gives your voice weight. That's what gives your presence power. And power, real power, doesn't come from control. It comes from ownership. Owning your thoughts. Owning your energy. Owning your impact, whether you feel ready or not. Because you won't always feel ready. But self-leaders move anyway. They move not from emotion, but from commitment. They act not from hype, but from honor. Because to lead is to serve. And to serve, you must be whole. You must be grounded in something deeper than approval. You must be rooted in values stronger than your mood. Because moods change, but vision remains. Circumstances shift, but character must stand. So build that character. Every morning before the world wakes, you lead yourself. You win the mental war before you face the physical one. You get clear before you get busy. You set your intentions, your tone, your truth. Because the world doesn't follow the loudest, it follows the most anchored. And if you want to be followed, you must first follow through the struggle, through the silence, through the seasons where it looks like nothing's working. Because those seasons don't break leaders, they build them. They build the resilience, the empathy, the authority that can only be earned, not bought, not borrowed, earned. So when you speak, your words carry weight. When you move, your presence inspires motion. When you lead from experience, not just education. You lead from having walked through your own wilderness. And now, people follow not because you told them to, but because you've become someone worth following. They follow because you embody the path. You don't just talk discipline, you are discipline. You don't just preach integrity, you bleed integrity. You don't just set a vision, you live it with every breath, every step, every decision. Because the greatest leadership isn't loud, it's consistent. It's the way you show up when no one else will. It's the way you keep showing up long after others have quit. It's the way you walk through uncertainty like it's sacred ground, because you know pressure reveals the truth. And your truth has been tested. You've been in the dark. You've felt the doubt. You've faced the moment where everything in you wanted to stop and you kept going. That is what people follow. Not your talent, not your charisma, your perseverance. Because the leader who has endured becomes the leader who can empower. So now when someone says, how do I lead others? You don't point to a strategy. You point to your standards. You show them your mornings. You show them your mindset. You show them your non-negotiables. Because those are the things that make a leader real. Not how well they speak, but how well they listen. Not how many people they impress, but how many they impact. And that impact always starts with presence. Not being everywhere, but being here. Being with your people. Being with your mission. Being with your own inner dialogue and making sure it's one of power, not permission. You don't need permission to lead. You are the permission. You don't need approval to be great. You are the approval. You don't wait for someone to tell you you're ready. You get ready by leading anyway. Leading through fear. Leading through setbacks. Leading through days when everything in your body says pause and your purpose says press on. Because the greatest leaders didn't wait for the way they made it. They didn't wait for clarity. They cultivated it in motion. They didn't wait for confidence. They built it through action. And that is your call now. Not to simply motivate, not to simply inspire, but to embody what it means to lead yourself so powerfully that your life becomes a mirror, reflecting back to others what they could be if they chose to rise. So rise. Every day, rise. When it's easy, rise. When it's painful, rise. When no one sees you, rise. When the applause is gone, rise. When you feel unqualified, uncertain, unseen, especially then, rise. Because that is leadership. That is the standard. That is what separates the remembered from the forgotten, the admired from the ignored, the leader from the one who merely speaks. And if you live this, truly live this not once, but every single day, you'll never need to chase influence because your influence will move ahead of you. It will walk into rooms before you do. It will echo in conversations you're not even part of because leadership, true leadership, doesn't need introduction. It introduces itself by the life you lead. And when your life becomes your message, your example becomes your legacy. Not just in words, but in presence. Not just in achievements, but in alignment. Because people don't remember what you said as much as they remember how you made them feel. And people feel energy. They feel truth. They feel alignment. That's the ripple effect of self-leadership. It transcends the moment and echoes into eternity. It doesn't matter if you have 1,000 followers or none. It doesn't matter if your platform is a stage or a dinner table. What matters is how you lead you. Because the world doesn't need more leaders who command attention. It needs more leaders who command themselves, who can sit in a storm and stay grounded, who can be handed power and remain humble, who can be handed failure and remain faithful, Who can hold a vision no one else sees and walk toward it anyway? That's you now. Not because you were born different, but because you decided to be. You decided that your life would not be dictated by mood swings or market shifts, by public opinion or private fears. You decided that you would be the kind of person who shows up not because it's convenient, but because it's called for. And now the call is louder than ever. The world is watching. But more importantly, you are watching. And the only way to become the leader they follow is to first become the leader you would follow. So ask yourself, would you follow you? Would you trust your own example? Would you hand your dreams to your current level of consistency, discipline, clarity, courage? If not, don't shame it. Shape it. Start now. Start again. Start with one. One truth. One choice. One aligned action. Because self-leadership is not a destination. It is a daily decision. A moment-by-moment vote for the future you claim to believe in. And each vote matters. Each time you rise when it's hard, each time you speak with integrity, each time you lead with love over ego, you cast another vote for the leader you're becoming. Until eventually, your life becomes undeniable. Your presence becomes electric. Your name becomes a byword for excellence. Not because you were perfect, but because you were present. Not because you knew everything, but because you owned everything. And when you own everything, your thoughts, your time, your energy, your decisions, you own your impact. You become a lighthouse in a sea of noise. You become the calm in someone else's storm. You become the proof that greatness is not found, it's forged. So keep forging, keep rising, keep leading, because the greatest influence you will ever have on this world begins with the way you lead yourself when no one is looking. And that's the sacred part. The part no one claps for. The part no one sees. The part where real leaders are born in the quiet, in the unseen, in the internal trenches of self-accountability. When you lead yourself in private, the world takes notice in public. You don't have to post about your disciplinate shows in your demeanor. You don't have to explain your character. It echoes in your consistency. You don't have to convince anyone of your value. It radiates in how you carry your vision. Because true leadership isn't about what you do when the spotlight hits. It's about what you choose when no one is watching. Do you choose excellence when mediocrity is easier? Do you choose growth when comfort tempts? Do you choose forgiveness when ego flares? Do you choose vision when distraction screams? That's the real battlefield, not the market, not your metrics, not your following. The battlefield is between your ears. And if you win there, you win everywhere. You walk different. You speak different. You move different. Because you know that your leadership doesn't depend on followers, it depends on foundation. And your foundation is now forged. Forged in morning routines when you could have slept in. Forged in silent reflections when you could have run from truth. Forged in hard conversations, in humble ownership, in courageous stillness. And now, you're not trying to be a leader, you are one. Because real leaders don't announce themselves. They are revealed. Revealed through adversity. Revealed through grace under pressure. Revealed through unwavering standards when the world lowers its bar. That's who you are now. Not just a voice, but a vessel. Not just a boss, but a beacon. Not just a motivator, but a mirror reflecting what's possible for everyone still trapped in self-doubt. And your power? It doesn't come from knowing all the answers. It comes from being willing to keep showing up until you become one. So lead yourself daily, relentlessly, without applause. Lead your energy before you lead a team. Lead your focus before you lead a business. Lead your healing before you lead a household. Lead your thoughts before you lead a movement. Because when you lead youthfully, fiercely, and faithfully, there's no limit to what or who you'll inspire to rise. And that That is how you lead yourself before you lead others. And that is how you change the world. Because changing the world doesn't start with a speech, a crowd, or a stage. It starts in the solitude of self-conquest. It starts in the moments no one sees. When you shut down the noise and face the mirror without a mask. When you stop performing and start transforming. When you stop running and start returning to yourself, your values, your highest vision. Because the hardest person you'll ever lead is the one in your own skin. And the most important leadership lesson you'll ever learn is this. Your life is your loudest sermon. Not your opinions, not your posts, not your plans, your patterns, your habits, your presence. People don't follow what you say. They follow what you sustain. So what are you sustaining? Are you sustaining momentum or mediocrity? Are you sustaining integrity or image? Are you sustaining courage or comfort? Every choice you make is a vote. Every thought you accept is a builder or a burglar of your future. So be vigilant. Guard your gates. Speak truth into the cracks. Sharpen your standard like a blade. Because the world does not reward leaders who react, it follows leaders who respond with intention. The ones who don't need chaos to prove they can lead. The ones who don't need applause to validate their authority. The ones who are stable in the storm because they've already tamed the chaos within. This is your power now. To lead with fire and never burn out. To lead with empathy and never be manipulated. To lead with vision and never lose your roots. Because roots matter more than reach. You want to build wide? First, go deep. Deep into your discipline. Deep into your self-awareness. Deep into your why, until it becomes a flame nothing can extinguish. That's when the world starts to notice. Not because you shouted, but because you embodied. Not because you chased them, but because you became magnetic. Because in the end, leadership is legacy. And legacy is built in moments of decision, of integrity, of self-leadership, that compound into a life that others can trust. So now, the torch is in your hand. Not to carry for applause, but to carry with honor. Lead yourself like the world depends on it, because it does. And when your leadership rises from within, when your life becomes the example, you'll no longer ask, am I ready to lead others? The world will already be following. And when they follow, they won't be following a title. They won't be following a resume or a polished bio or the curated highlight reel. They'll be following your truth, the depth of your authenticity, the courage of your convictions, the steadiness in your soul when the world starts to shake. Because true leadership doesn't draw attention to itself. It draws people to their own power. It reflects what's possible. It awakens what's dormant. It ignites what's divine. That's the kind of leader the world is dying for. Not the loudest, the clearest, not the smartest, the most solid, not the most followed, the most faithful to the calling, to the process, to the inner code that cannot be broken. So let this be your vow, that you will not lead for applause, but for alignment, that you will not lead to impress, but to inspire through embodiment, that you will not lower your standard to be accepted. You will raise the room through presence alone, because the world is already full of noise. It needs your clarity. The world is flooded with leaders who seek control. It needs your command. The world is heavy with those who chase power. It needs your peace. So carry that. Carry the fire without burning out. Carry the truth without watering it down. Carry the standard, not like it's a burden, but like it's a beacon. And walk forward knowing this. You were never meant to follow the old models. You were never meant to shrink to the expectations of broken systems. You were never meant to fake strength. You were born to forge it. And now, you've done the work. You've walked through the fire. You've looked yourself in the eye and decided, I will lead me. I will rise before the sun. I will show up without applause. I will execute without emotion. I will embody the message. Because if I can lead myself through the dark, I can light the way for others. And that is the mark of a true leader. Not that you change the world with your words, but that you transform the world by changing you. And when you change youthfully, radically, and without compromise, the ripple is unstoppable. Because self-leadership is magnetic. It calls the right people into your orbit and filters the rest. It elevates the room without a word. It lifts others not by force, but by frequency. You don't have to sell leadership when you are leadership. You don't have to command respect when you walk in respectfully aligned with your highest self. You don't need to scream for change when your life quietly demands it. That's the silent power of those who lead themselves first. They are walking examples of possibility. They don't manipulate, they model. They don't control, they cultivate. They don't push people forward. They pull them upward by the gravity of their example. And the truth is, that's always been the most powerful kind of leadership. Not the kind that dominates, but the kind that demonstrates. Demonstrates restraint when anger would be easy. Demonstrates compassion when judgment feels justified. Demonstrates strength through vulnerability, not volume. And when you live that way, you don't just impact people, you awaken them. You call them into remembering who they are. You invite them into a higher frequency, a deeper integrity, a greater purpose. Not because you ask them to, but because your life is proof it's possible. And that's the legacy. Not what you built, but how you built it. Not what you accomplished, but who you became in the process. And now you know, the real work was never out there. It was in you. The real battlefield was never external, it was within. And now, with your soul forged in discipline, your mind aligned with clarity, your actions stitched with integrity, you don't just lead. You become the standard. So from this moment on, never doubt your role. Never shrink your responsibility. Never second guess your mission. You were not just born to lead others. You were born to master yourself first. And in doing so, you have become something this world rarely sees. A leader so deeply anchored in truth, so wildly alive with purpose, and so consistent in alignment that the world cannot help but rise in your presence. You have become the fire. Now lead boldly, silently, relentlessly, not for credit, not for praise, but because you can. And because nothing is more powerful than a human fully aligned with their own soul, leading from the inside out. That is the ultimate revolution. And you are already living it. So now, carry it forward. Carry it with dignity. Carry it with grace. Carry it with the kind of unshakable commitment that turns mountains into memories and obstacles into origin stories. You don't need a throne to lead. You don't need a platform. You don't need a permission slip signed by the world. You are already enough. You are already equipped. You are already the leader because you led yourself here. Through doubt, through delay, through the darkness that whispers, who are you to lead? And you answered it not with noise, not with ego, but with evidence. The evidence of your consistency. The evidence of your inner work. The evidence of a life no longer dictated by fear, but driven by fire. So let them watch. Let them wonder. Let them feel the shift in the room when you enter, because they will. They may not know what's different, but they'll feel it in their spirit. This one is different. This one moves differently. This one walks like they know where they're going, even when the road isn't clear. This one isn't waiting for the world to change. They are becoming the change. And that's the final truth. The world doesn't follow hype. It follows hearts that burn with truth. It follows lives lived in alignment. It follows leaders who don't just talk power, they walk it every single day. And if you live like that, if you hold that line when it's hard, if you protect that flame when it's lonely, if you honor that standard when no one's clapping. You won't just lead others. You will liberate them, not by giving them the answers, but by reminding them that they had the power all along. And now you're proof, the leader, the example, the revolution in human form. So lead relentlessly, quietly, powerfully, because the world isn't changed by leaders who are followed. It's changed by those who follow themselves first. And now your moment is not coming. It's here. This isn't preparation for someday. This is the day. This is the day you stop looking outside and start looking inward. This is the day you stop outsourcing your power and start owning it. This is the day you silence the noise, raise your standard, and walk like the ground was waiting for you to arrive. You've done the work. You've faced the voice of doubt and answered with discipline. You've stared into the mirror and met the only competitor that ever mattered, yourself. And now you move like someone who knows that they are the standard, knows that they are the storm, knows that leadership is not a role you step into. It's a reality you live from. Every action, every word, every choice, every breath. Because you're not just building a life. You're building a lighthouse. And the world is watching not for perfection, but for proof. Proof that it's possible to rise from nothing and lead with everything. Proof that it's possible to lose the crowd and still find your compass. Proof that it's possible to walk away from average and never look back. And that proof is you. So from this moment forward, walk with that knowing. Stand with that strength. Speak with that certainty. And live not like a leader in training, but like a leader fully claimed. Because the most powerful person in any room is not the one with the spotlight. It's the one who brings their own light. And you are that light now. Burn bright, lead hard, never dim, and never forget. Before you ever lead the world, you led you. And that changed everything. So let this be your vow, etched not in ink, but in the fire of your being, that you will not betray yourself to fit in, that you will not abandon your path just to walk beside others, that you will not soften your vision to ease someone else's insecurity. You were not born to blend, you were born to blaze. You were not born to follow, you were born to forge. And every time you choose self-leadership, every time you get up when it would have been easier to stay down, every time you speak truth when silence would be safer, every time you choose character over convenience, you are fulfilling that destiny. Not by accident, but by design, by discipline, by decision. So decide now and forever to walk this world as the leader of you, to hold your values like a sword, to hold your mission like a flame, to hold your name like a legacy that will echo long after you're gone. Because that's what real leadership is. It's not how loud you speak, it's how deeply you live. It's not the size of your influence. It's the strength of your alignment. And alignment isn't an act. It's a way of life. It's the way you look at yourself at night and know you didn't fold, didn't flinch, didn't sell your soul for short-term applause. Because you weren't living for applause. You were living for impact. And that impact, it's already happening. Every time someone watches you rise without making noise, they believe they can rise too. Every time someone sees you stay rooted while others chase, they find the courage to slow down and go deep. Every time someone feels your presence, they remember their own. That's leadership. That's what it means to change the world. Not from a podium, but from within. So don't just carry this message, be it. Don't just repeat these. Words embody them. Live them so fully, so fearlessly, so relentlessly that people won't need to ask what kind of leader you are. They'll know before you even say a word. Because when you lead yourself, you don't follow trends. You set them. You don't chase impact. You become it. And the world doesn't change after you do. It changes because you did. And as you walk forward, head high, soul steady, heart on fire, remember this. You are no longer waiting for the next chapter. You are writing it. with every thought you guard, with every standard you raise, with every day you show up, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, because that's the moment leadership becomes real, not in comfort, not in applause, not in success, but in the unseen moments when you choose to keep your word to you. That's where trust is built. That's where authority is earned. That's where the internal becomes unshakable and the external finally aligns. And when the world asks, where did that come from? You'll smile, not because you stumbled on greatness, but because you became it, brick by brick, day by day, thought by thought. You trained your mind to follow discipline, not emotion. You trained your soul to chase purpose, not praise. You trained your habits to reflect a life built on principles, not pressure. And now you walk as someone who doesn't fear failure because you've led yourself through it. You don't fear rejection because your identity isn't rented. You don't fear uncertainty because your clarity comes from within. You don't need to see the whole path. You just need to take the next step fully, boldly, with your entire being aligned to your purpose. Because that's all leadership ever really is. Not controlling others, but commanding yourself. And the more fully you command your own being, the more fully the world will respond. Not because you demanded it, but because your energy declared it. You don't need to explain it. You don't need to promote it. You don't need to convince anyone. You just need to keep becoming the living, breathing embodiment of what it means to lead yourself first, always, forever. Because when you do, when you live like that, when you move with that fire, that clarity, that depth, the world won't just follow you. It will be changed by you. And that is how true leadership begins. And so it is. The transformation is complete not because you heard the words, but because you became them. Because you dared to stop asking, when will it happen? And started declaring, I am happening. Because you stopped searching for leaders to follow and started leading yourself. No longer tossed by the waves of external noise. No longer bound by the expectations of others. No longer seduced by shortcuts that rob you of substance. You've stepped into the quiet power that can't be faked. The kind that comes only from self-mastery. And from this point forward, everything you touch will feel different. Every conversation will carry more depth. Every choice will carry more weight. Every moment will carry more meaning. Because you're no longer just showing up for the task. You're showing up for the transformation. Every action you take now echoes beyond the moment. Because it's not coming from pressure. It's coming from purpose. And when you live like that, you don't just leave an impression, you leave a mark. You shift rooms without speaking. You elevate standards without demanding. You inspire change without trying because you are the change. So let the world watch. Let the world feel the rise. Let them see a leader not built by luck or gifted with title, but forged by choice. Let them witness a person who chose alignment over applause, conviction over convenience, and soul over strategy. Because you didn't wait to become ready. You led yourself until you were. You didn't fake the strength. You earned it. And now you don't walk in doubt, you walk in dominion. With a presence that says, I've done the work. I carry the weight. I hold the flame. And no matter what the world throws at you, you lead anyway. You love anyway. You rise anyway. Because that's who you are now. Not a follower of trends. Not a seeker of approval, but a living example of what happens when a human being dares to lead themselves first, fully, forever. And if they ever forget what that looks like, they'll look to you because you're the proof.